القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Sura Al-Ma'ida, verse 83. وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ, when they hear what is revealed to the Prophet, when they listen to what is revealed to the Prophet, تَرَى أَعْيُنَهُمْ تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ, you see that their eyes fill with tears. Their eyes are filled with tears. تَفِيضُ مِنَ الدَّمْعِ shows that there are so much tears in their eyes that it flows on the cheeks. مِمَّا عَرَفُوا مِنَ الْحَقِّ, because of what they learned from the truth. يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا آمَنَا, they say, O our Lord, we believe. فَاكْتُبْنَا مَعَ الشَّاهِدِينَ, write us among the witnesses. What is this verse about? This verse is in connection to the previous one, which was explained the previous session. In the last ayah, in the last session, we talked about the three groups of non-Muslims: Jews, Christians, and polytheists. And that among these three, the nearest one to the Muslims are the Christians, because they have monks, priests, and because they are not arrogant. And this ayah talks about them. Among Christians, there are some who are so ready for embracing the truth. The next ayah explains, وَمَا لَنَا لَا نُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَمَا جَاءَنَا مِنَ الْحَقِّ وَنَطْمَعُ أَنْ يُدْخِلَنَا رَبُّنَا مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الصَّالِحِينَ. Why should not we embrace the truth? Why should not we believe in God and in what has come to us from the truth? It means the true revelation that they hear about. When they listen to it from the Prophet, they acknowledge that it is the truth. And they have the hope to enter paradise and يُدْخِلَنَا رَبُّنَا مَعَ الْقَوْمِ الصَّالِحِينَ, with the righteous people. So they say to God that, or they hope that God will let them enter the paradise, enter the heavens with the righteous people. There are some narrations about this ayah saying that these verses were revealed when Najashi, the Christian king of Habasha, Ethiopia today, he and some of his people, some of the leaders in his community, when they listened to the words of God through the Muslims who arrived in their country, that was their reaction. And this ayah explains that incident. فَأَثَابَهُمُ اللَّهُ بِمَا قَالُوا جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. Athaba comes from thawab. So what is the result? What is the consequence of their acts? The thawab and the reward that God gives them. So God gives them this reward because of what they say. بِمَا قَالُوا, because of what they say, what they said. Jannat, in Jannat, the object of athabahum. So he rewarded them, he gave them this reward. What is it? It is Jannat, the heavens, تجري من تحتها الأنهار, under which the rivers flow. خالدين فيها, they shall be there forever. وذلك جزاء المحسنين, and this is the reward of the good doers. So what about other people? Not all people acknowledge the truth. Not all people, when faced with the truth, embrace it. So the next ayah explains about the counterparty. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا, those who disbelieve, those who deny our signs, our verses. أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ الْجَحِيمِ, they are inmates of hell. And Jahim is another name for Jahannam. The next ayah, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تُحَرِّمُوا طَيِّبَاتِ مَا أَحَلَّ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. It is about permissibility of many things, food, and it's not only for food. There is another ayah after that which emphasizes on different types of food. But in this ayah, anything which is permissible to use. The general permission given by God to people to use the mercies that God has given them in this world. لا تحرموا طيبات ما أحل الله. Don't forbid the pure things that God has permitted you to use them. طيبات ما أحل الله. ما أحل means what God has permitted. طيبات means the pure things. Does it mean that ما أحل الله is general? Some of them are طيبات, some of them are not طيبات? No. All what God has permitted is طيب, is pure. So ما أحل الله and طيبات, they're the same, meaning that طيبات explains the nature of what God has permitted. So لا تحرموا, you do not forbid what God has permitted. There may be some people who tend to prohibit certain things that God has permitted, either by legislating a law and attributing that to God, saying that in religion this is haram, or if they don't give a fatwa to ban it, but they try to stop people using it, or at least they themselves refrain from using it. Quran says, no, you should not take this attitude. You should not take this approach toward what God has permitted. So the permissible objects are to be used. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. Don't be transgressors. Don't exceed the limits. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. God doesn't like the ones who go beyond the limits. If God has forbidden certain things, so if you change the borders and you want to include some of the permissible things in the domain of the forbidden things, this is i'tida, this is getting beyond the limits, because you are not the one who lays down the rules, it's God. The next ayah says, وَكُلُوا, eat. In the previous verse, we had طَيِّبَاتْ مَا أَحَلَّ اللَّهِ, permission. It doesn't say the permission is regarding eating something, or drinking something, or wearing a piece of cloth. So it is general. But this one is about eating, although sometimes in the Quran, eating also is used in a general sense. لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل, for example, doesn't mean the edible things, that you should not eat the properties of others, even if it is not an edible item, and you consume the money belonging to others, that is also an instance of لا تأكلوا أموالكم. So akl sometimes is used for consuming in a general sense. كلوا مما رزقكم الله may mean the general meaning of consuming, or the specific meaning of eating. Both are possible. وَكُلُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَكُمُ اللَّهِ. Eat from what God has provided you. حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا. That is halal, that is طيب and pure. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي أَنْتُمْ بِهِ مُؤْمِنُونَ. Have taqwa and piety in regards with God, in whom you believe. لَا يُؤَاخِذُكُمُ اللَّهُ بِاللَّغْوِ فِي أَيْمَانِكُمْ. So before I explain this one, let me complete one point about the previous verse. What happened that these verses were revealed? That God prohibits Muslims, believers, to prohibit the permissible items. History says that some of the companions of the Prophet, they wanted to have a very highest style of life. So they decided to ban on themselves certain things, certain halal things. For example, one of them said, I swear by God that I shall not eat meat anymore. Another one says, I will not sleep at night. I will take some naps during day, but I shall not sleep. I shall not give my body this pleasure of sleeping at night. The other one said, I shall not continue the sexual relations with my wife. When the Prophet heard about this issue, he did not approve of it. And these verses were revealed that you should not get beyond the limits laid down by God. لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. In this ayah, we have the word ayman, and this phrase is repeated because another time we had this phrase in Surah Al-Baqarah. لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم ولكن يؤاخذكم. Here you see يؤاخذكم بما عقدتم الأيمان. In Surah Al-Baqarah ولكن يؤاخذكم بما كسبت قلوبكم. Otherwise, the first sentence is exactly the same. لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. You know, it is about ayman, and ayman means the oath. Ayman is the plural of yamin. Yamin literally means the right hand. The right hand in Arabic is called yamin. But why oath is called yamin? Because a certain gesture by hand indicated in that time, indicated among the Arabs, indicated the act of taking an oath. So for taking an oath, they use a certain gesture by hand, by the right hand. That is why oath is called yamin, and ayman is the plural. So the oaths. لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم. God does not put blame on you because of the meaningless oaths. There are some oaths that people take without meaning them. It has become a habit for them. For example, there are some people, always they say, La wallah, bala wallah, especially in the market when they are talking about the price and they want to emphasize that this is the right price of the goods. So they use these oaths. It is not good. We have a hadith advising people not to use these oaths. But anyway, if someone takes such an oath, which he does not really mean, he's not serious, he has not intended the meaning of the oath, then there is no blame on the person. This is not technically a valid oath, and it doesn't have consequences, legal consequences for him. وَلَكِنْ يُؤَاخِذُكُمْ بِمَا عَقَّدْتُمُ الْأَيْمَانِ. But God puts blame on you because of بِمَا عَقَّدْتُمُ الْأَيْمَانِ. What you aqd means to tie. When you tie a knot, this is aqd. Aqada means he tied. Aqada, it has one qaf more. This is tashdid here. So it is another form of the verb, bab taf'il. It is to emphasize, to tie very firmly, right? Aqadtum al-ayman. Tying an oath means taking an oath. So it means a real oath, an actual oath. So God puts blame on you for those oaths which are actual and real. So in case you break them, you are to be blamed, and you shall bear some consequences in Islamic Sharia. Now it says, what are the consequences? If an actual oath is broken, فَكَفَّارَتُهُ إِطْعَامُ عَشَرَةٍ. Kafara means atonement. The atonement is this. Why is it called kafara? Because kufr in Arabic means to cover. This covers the sin, you see. Atonement covers the sin. The sin is not pleasant. It has evil consequences. But now to cover it, you do something which is kafara, atonement. What is the atonement? إطعام عشرة مساكين من أوسط ما تطعمون أهلكم. To feed 10 miskin, 10 poor people. من أوسط ما تطعمون, from the average food that you give to your families. أو كسوتهم, or to give them clothes. أو تحرير رقبة, or to free a slave. So there are three options. You have to choose one of the three options. You are free to choose which one you want. Then فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ, the one who did not find, it means that he could not afford feeding, clothing, or freeing a slave, then فَصِيَامُ ثَلَاثَةِ أَيَّامٍ, he must fast 3 days. ذَلِكَ كَفَّارَةُ أَيْمَانِكُمْ إِذَا حَلَفْتُمْ. This is the atonement of your oaths when you take them, and it's clear when you broke them. I mean, after taking the oath and then breaking it, this is the atonement. وَاحْفَظُوا أَيْمَانَكُمْ. But you must protect your oaths. You must not break them. It is haram to break them, but if in case it was broken, that is the atonement. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ. This way, Allah clarifies His signs to you, His verses to you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, so that you may be grateful. The next verse is about wine, gambling, and some other sins. As you have noticed from the verse 87, the context of the verses changed. Before we were talking about Jews, Christians, and then we moved to some rulings of Sharia, not to forbid what has been permitted by God, and then taking oaths and the atonement for breaking oaths, and now prohibition of wine and gambling. Allama says the context shows that these verses, they were revealed in a separate occasion, separate from the previous verses. Even any of these 3 or 4 verses which deal with ahkam and rulings of Sharia may have been revealed in different occasions. Before, in the Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Nisa, we talked about the prohibition of wine. And Allama Tabatabai said that Quran declared prohibition and hurmah of drinking wine in different stages. But the way Allama Tabatabai explained it was different from the way that some other exegetes explain. Allama believed that even when the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, قُلْ فِيمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ, that is also a prohibition. It is not a preparation for prohibition. No, at that time it was prohibited. And also in Surah An-Nisa. And here, this ayah is the last verse. Is the last verse in the series of verses about wine. And this is to emphasize a prohibition which had already been declared. But the ayah shows that some people, some Muslims, did not give up drinking despite declaring prohibition by the Holy Prophet, but some did not give up. So this ayah was to stop it. And there is a phrase in the next verse that inshallah we shall explain, and it clarifies this point. Allama says this ayah is to emphasize. So we have many different words in the ayah which emphasize the prohibition of drinking wine. See, inna is for ta'kid, is for emphasize. إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان. Defilement. It's a dirty act, you see. This is again to emphasize it. من عمل الشيطان, from the work of shaitan. It is to emphasize. فاجتنبوه. Directly it is commanding Muslims, you must avoid it. لعلكم تفلحون. It's not that only. In the next verse, it explains about the evil consequences of drinking wine. And then finally it says, فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ, in the next verse. Shall you give up? So it is asking people, asking Muslims, isn't it enough? You must give up. And then again, the next verse, 2 verses after this, 92, it continues that you must obey Allah, you must not disobey Him. So too much emphasis is put on the issue of drinking wine and prohibition of drinking. إنما الخمر والميسر, wine, al-maysir, gambling, al-ansab. Al-ansab has 2 meanings, either the idols, meaning worshipping idols, or the stone tables on which they offered sacrifice to the idols. That is also forbidden and haram. Wal azlam. Al-azlam means some wooden arrows which were used for a sort of gambling. And you remember in the beginning of Surah Al-Ma'ida, we had this word, وَأَن تَسْتَقْسِمُوا بِالْأَزْلَامِ. One of the forbidden cases of meat was that if an animal is slaughtered and then certain people who have collected money to buy together one big animal, like for example a camel, then they cut it into pieces and they draw lots by striking certain arrows on the different pieces of the meat of that animal to decide and to reach this result that who will have how many shares of that meat. So there were some people with many shares at the end and some without any share, although all of them have equally contributed in buying that animal. So it is a sort of gambling and it is haram. And that meat also is haram. If you draw lots in this way, it makes consuming that meat haram. So it was mentioned before in the beginning of Surah Al-Ma'ida. Al-Azlam also is repeated here. But there are some thinkers, some exegetes who say Azlam may refer to something different. Because those arrows, those wooden arrows, were also used for drawing lots, but for another purpose. If a person wanted to do something, wanted to travel, for example, he didn't know, is it good to travel or not? So he was looking for good or bad omens. And he used this method of drawing lots by certain wooden arrows to decide whether to go or not. Some Mufassirin, they suggested that Azlam must refer to this one. Because if we interpret Azlam as the first interpretation, then it will be one instance of gambling. And gambling is mentioned in this ayah before, Al-Khamr wal-Maisir. So Azlam must be something different. So it's better to interpret it the second meaning. And then they continue. Why is it haram? See, the first interpretation is clearly haram because it is one instance of gambling. But what is wrong with this act? If we interpret it, the second interpretation, what's wrong with it? They say that probably it implies that the person is accessing the knowledge of the unseen because he doesn't know whether to travel or not. It is as if by drawing lots with this method, he is predicting the future. And he is claiming that I have the knowledge of the unseen, while the knowledge of the unseen, ilm al-ghaib, is exclusive to God. Allama Tabatabai disagrees with this interpretation. He says first, Azlam is interpreted in the Quran itself in the same surah. So we shouldn't say why Azlam is somehow overlapping with Al-Maisir. It has no problem. Azlam is one clear example, which was very common in those days. So it required some emphasis. Because anyway, Azlam was explained by God in the same book, in the same surah. So we should not interpret it in another way. And that act, drawing lot just to decide whether to do something or not, it does not claim knowledge of the unseen. Actually, this is different from istikhara, as Allama Tabatabai explains istikhara. Say we have istikhara in our customs that if a person, after reflection, he wants to travel, for example, first he must think if this travel is good or bad. So sometimes it happens that he cannot reach a conclusion because there are positive and negative points on both sides. So he cannot decide. Then he must consult with others. If after reflection and consultation still he could not reach any conclusion, it's okay to ask God, oh God, I do istikhara with the hope that you will assist me. It does not show that that the result of istikhara is something confirmed by God, it has a connection with the unseen world, or that it necessitates that act must be done, even if someone does istikhara to do and it is good, it is not wajib for him to do it. So it's better to interpret Azlam as what people in the age of Jahiliyyah did when they wanted to divide the shares of an animal. رِجْسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ. All these forbidden acts, they are defilement from the work of shaitan. And we know what is the nature of the work of shaitan. The work of shaitan is not that shaitan personally gets involved in processing wine or inventing gambling. No, it is by temptation. So it is people who do these acts. They are done by human being, but it is with the temptation of shaitan. لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ. So Quran explains the nature of shaitan's work. فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. The next verse, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَنْ يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ. Shaitan wants to create between you hatred, enmity and hostility. في الخمر والميسر, in drinking wine and in gambling. وَيَصُدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ, and to avert you from remembrance of God and from prayer. هَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Shall you give up? Will you stop doing these haram acts? It shows that some Muslims, despite knowing that it was haram, they were persistent in committing these sins. Allah says, ayah shows that averting from the remembrance of God and prayer is in common between all the four sins, but al-adawa al-baghdha, they're particularly more visible in regards with the first two sins, drinking and gambling. The next verse, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ, again it emphasizes that you must obey, you must follow the commands of God and the Prophet. وَاحْذَرُوا, and beware. فَأَنْ تَوَلَّيْتُمْ فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا عَلَى رَسُولِنَا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. But if you do not obey, if you turn back, then know that our Prophet has only the responsibility to declare the message. So he does not force you. لَيْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ جُنَاحٌ فِيمَا طَعِمُوا. There is no blame on people who have faith and they do the righteous acts. There is no blame on them. There is no sin فِيمَا طَعِمُوا, in what they eat. إِذَا مَا اتَّقَوْا وَآمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, with these conditions. If they have taqwa, piety, faith, عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, if they do the right acts, ثُمَّ اتَّقَوْا وَآمَنُوا, it emphasizes taqwa. 3 times taqwa is repeated. So if they have piety, and twice amanu is repeated. You see, actually 3 times, but the first amanu in the beginning of the sentence is just the subject of the ayah. Then إِذَا مَا اتَّقَوْا وَآمَنُوا is to repeat the same sentence, saying that this is the condition. The next amanu, it means to have faith in details of Sharia, because we have a general faith in the religion as a whole. Then you have also to believe in the details of all laws of Sharia. وَأَحْسَنُوا means to act upon them. So there are the conditions. If you meet these conditions, there is no sin, there is no blame on you in eating. Does it mean that if the person does not have these conditions, he has no right to eat something? It does not make sense. Allah says, no, this ayah was revealed for this question that some Muslims asked the Prophet, what about those who had consumed wine, they had gambled before revelation of the verse, before knowing the prohibition? Quran says, okay, if you are good Muslims, true Muslims now, it is okay. There is no blame on you for your past. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَيَبْلُوَنَّكُمُ اللَّهُ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الصَّيْدِ. God will test you with something of a game, the animals which are hunted. تَنَالُهُ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَرِمَاحُكُمْ, which your hands or your spears reach. So they are in the reach of your hands. It means that they are so close. Like, for example, the kids of some animals. So it's not that difficult to catch them. or rimahukum, with your spears, those big animals that you must go hunting. So God tests you with these animals. لِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَخَافُهُ بِالْغَيْبِ, to understand and to realize and to know who fears God. Bilghayb. Bilghayb means in secret. This is about the ruling of Ihram. When the person performs Hajj, he enters the state of Ihram. And in the state of Ihram, it is forbidden to hunt. So it is a test from God. God tests you with this to see who is really fearing God and he follows his orders. There is a there is a narration about this ayah saying that in one occasion, some animals, they walked so near Muslims, even big animals, that Muslims could catch them by hands. I mean, they were able to catch them by hands. But it was the test. Because before that, they knew that it is forbidden to hunt. Allama Tabatabai says it can be right, but at the same time, because there is also another hadith explaining that tanalu aydikum means what is in your reach. I mean, what you can reach with your hands, not the big animals, but the kids of the animals, or the eggs of some animals you can take from their nests. This is also haram. In the state of Ihram, you have no right to collect the eggs of wild animals. So both can be true. They're not contradictory. That certain incident may have happened, and for that this ayah was revealed. But the phrase used in the Quran, tanalu aydikum wa rimahukum, has put in this format in order to be general and include all cases, big animals, small animals, the eggs. The next ayah, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَقْتُلُوا الصَّيْدَ وَأَنْتُمْ حُرُمٌ. Don't kill the game, I mean those animals, wild animals in the nature, وَأَنْتُمْ حُرُمٌ, while you are in the state of Ihram. Hurum is the plural of haram. Haram and muhrim is the same, the person who is in the state of Ihram. In that state, many things become forbidden on for the person for a certain period. وَمَنْ قَتَلَهُ مِنْكُمْ مُتَعَمِّدًا, the one who kills, who hunts, who kills that animal, مُتَعَمِّدًا, intentionally, فَجَزَاءٌ مِثْلُ مَا قَتَلَ مِنَ النَّعَمِ. Now, what is the result? It means what is the punishment? What is the, atonement for that? Jaza means the punishment, but here punishment means the atonement. What is the kafara? مِثْلُ مَا قَتَلَ مِنَ النَّعَمِ. He must offer a sacrifice similar to the animal that he has killed. From na'am, from the cattle. So, for example, if it is an antelope, so probably similar to that can be a sheep. But if it is a big animal, so similar to that is a cow. So something similar to يَحْكُمُ بِذَوَى عَدْلٍ مِّنْكُمْ. Judged by two fair people, two just people, they should decide. Okay, so as they judge that what is the equivalent to the animal that you hunted. Hadiyan, had means the sacrifice. Baligh al-Kaaba, reaches the Kaaba. In the Sharia, we have rulings that if the person hunts during the state of Ihram, then in some cases, depending on the time of and the place, so in some cases, the sacrifice must be done in Mecca. In some cases, it must be done in Mina. So it refers to the cases in which it must be done in Mecca, baligh al-Kaaba, to reach Kaaba. أو كفارة طعام مساكين. Or, so that was one case, or the atonement is to feed some poor people. Is it optional to decide whether to give that one or to give this one, I mean to feed, or if you are not able to do the first one, then you must do the second one? Ayah does not explain. So we must refer to Sunnah, to Ahadith, to see what is the type of this kafara. Are they optional, or we must go through stages, levels? So if number one was not feasible, then we go to number two. أو عدل ذلك صياما, or equivalent to that from fasting. If the person is not able to feed, then he must fast. ليذوق وبال أمره, to taste the result and the burden of his act. عفى الله عما سلف. God forgave what has passed. It means those who had hunted before establishment of this law, before this prohibition, those who had hunted before, okay, it's okay. There is no blame on them. وَمَنْ عَادَ فَيَنْتَقِمُ اللَّهُ. The one who returns. Who returns means who does it for the first time after establishment of the law. No. Allah says, وَمَنْ عَادَ means the person who hunts for the second time after knowing that this is haram. Because it says, فَيَنْتَقِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ. Before we had the one who kills an animal intentionally, he must pay some kafara. But now there is no kafara here, intiqam. So God takes revenge from that person. And that is why in our Sharia we have this law that the first time, if the person intentionally hunts during the state of ihram, the first time he must pay kafara. The second time there is no kafara because it is more severe. Now the sin is grave. And here this sin is not to be punished by a kafara. No, God knows what is the kafara. يَنْتَقِمُ اللَّهُ مِنْهُ وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ ذُو انْتِقَامٍ. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.